Hello, are you interested in learning about AI engineering and you're a complete beginner with little or no experience building software? Then join me for a 10-day live online course called Beginner's Intro to AI Engineering. We'll be going from zero to having a good understanding of AI engineering concepts to get you started in the world of AI engineering. No prior coding experience is needed because we'll be walking through the basics of Python and software engineering. We'll be talking about the fundamentals of AI engineering with Claude API. And then we'll also be touching upon Claude Code, which is an AI-powered coding tool. And here's an overview of the complete course details of what we'll be covering each day. So this course is for complete beginners. All you need is your curiosity. And the course runs from July 13th to 24th. Okay, so it's 10 working days, Monday to Friday the first week and Monday to Friday the second week. Each day we'll be meeting from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. So totally we'll be having 10 live sessions, each is 1.5 hours. So totally we're going to have 15 hours of live interactive sessions. See, the course material like Python, software engineering fundamentals, AI fundamentals, even Claude Code, right? They're all just available online. But what makes this course special is us coming together, interacting, discussing, exploring these topics and learning them together. There's some magic that happens when people come together and put their minds to learn something. So that's basically what we'll be facilitating. And we'll be doing this in a mob programming style, right? So that's one of my favorite styles of building software. We're going to apply that to learning AI engineering together. So it's basically one person will be sharing their screen and they'll be writing the code. The entire team, like 5 or 10 people, will be looking at the same problem and trying to solve it with ideas that each of them come up with. It's basically like playing a multiplayer game. So that's essentially the style in which we'll be facilitating this course. And it's going to be a fantastic, highly valuable 15 hours together. On week 1, we'll be primarily focusing on Python and software engineering fundamentals. So on day 1, Monday, we'll be talking about the pursuit of higher abstractions. So abstractions is one of my favorite topics in software engineering, and I can't wait to facilitate the discussions with you about abstractions and its significance in software engineering. And then we'll talk about binary, which basically makes computers and everything that we do possible. And then we'll set up Python and we'll run our first hello world inside of it. So we're going to be using primarily something called Jupyter Notebooks to run our Python code. And we'll see more about it during the course. And on day 2, we'll be talking about variables and data types. And we'll also see how we can work with numbers and string in Python. Now, Python has this really powerful way in which you can manipulate strings. So we'll explore that on day 2. And then on day 3, we'll talk about more interesting data types like lists, tuples, and dicts, how this basically enables us to hold much more complex data in them. And then we'll talk about iteration and control flow. Here we'll talk about how we can loop using while loop and for loop, and also use the if-else statement to control the flow in which the code should be executed. And then on day 4, we'll talk about functions and modularity. Again, modularity is a favorite topic of mine. We'll also see how we can organize our code with modules. And then finally on day 5 of week 1, we'll talk about object-oriented programming and classes. And then we'll talk about JSON, which is very important when it comes to AI engineering. And then we'll also touch upon APIs, application programming interfaces, and how we can use them. Because when it comes to AI engineering, again, we're going to make use of the Claude API. So this will be really useful to step into AI engineering. So that's week 1. And then in week 2, we're going to be primarily focusing on AI engineering with Claude API and then Claude Code. So we start with, first of all, discussing and exploring what exactly is AI engineering. Then we make use of the Claude API to access Claude. Because you might be familiar with directly using Claude through a web interface, but how do we use it through code? That's what we're going to be exploring on day 1. And then we'll talk about some basic prompt engineering concepts. Then on day 2, we'll see how we can steer the responses that we get back from Claude through the API. And we'll also talk about this important topic of prompt evaluation and prompt engineering. So these two go hand in hand, and they are basically like a hot topic today in the world of software engineering, especially with AI. Because, if you can't evaluate the responses you get from your prompts, you can't build reliable prompts. So we'll talk about this on day 7. And then on day 8, we'll talk about retrieval augmented generation, which basically allows us to use our own data with Claude. And then we'll talk about tools and function calling. It's because of the tool use these LLMs become agentic. So we'll talk about that. And then on day 9, we talk about the model context protocol, which is basically tools, but they are tools that we can directly plug into and use instead of us having to define them ourselves. For example, we could just make use of a GitHub MCP and have access to all the different tools that GitHub offers. And we can also create our own MCP servers. We'll talk about that on day 9. And then finally, on day 10, we touch Claude Code. All right, so we get a tease of Claude Code, which is an AI-powered agentic coding tool. We'll explore all the foundational concepts that we'll need to be aware of in order to start using Claude Code to generate code and build some really cool software. So till day 9, we'll actually be writing most of the code or executing most of the code by hand, mostly through Jupyter notebooks. And then on day 10, we access Claude Code to start generating some interesting code for us. So that's basically the course. I'm sure it's going to be super useful to get started into this world of AI engineering. Now, I myself am a software engineer with over 17 years of experience building software. I've been primarily working in the VFX and animation industry, worked on movies such as The Jungle Book, The Lion King, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. More than anything, I love teaching and empowering people who are interested in software and computers. And I would love to facilitate you as you start your AI engineering journey. To register for this course, message me on WhatsApp at 735-8008-976. That's 735-8008-976. Seats are limited to keep the sessions lively and interactive, so register early. I look forward to facilitating this course for you. Thank you.